Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real-time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Today's guest is a 25-time Ironman finisher, a 3-time Ironman World Championship participant. He's got a passion for getting people fit and healthy. He's a franchise owner of Ironman in India. Please welcome CEO, co-founder, chief coach of YOSKA, Deepak Raj. Welcome, Deepak.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. So as you know, we love to talk about endurance and especially the endurance mindset. So Deepak, tell me how your endurance mindset has impacted your life unexpectedly.
I think one is it sort of brought a completely new perspective of taking care of yourself. I think it's not just running, but it's about eating right, sleeping right, lots of things. I think, and that took years to sort of realize. I think even when I started to run because I was overweight and a lot of maybe close to 95. I don't think I ever crossed 100 because I stopped weighing myself after a certain point, like most do. But took up running because there's a lot of people around who were also in that. I was in Germany on an IT project, and I saw a lot of people do that. So that's what sort of triggered that initial thought. But even when I did take up running and sort of did a few marathons, I don't think it really changed my sort of health and fitness that much. It changed, but until I started to eat right and build a lot of other habits, which took a few years. But yeah, that was a good start to that journey. And along the way, Ironman came along and moved out of corporate, took up this. So a lot of things happened, but really the trigger for that was to just lose weight. And like I'm sure everybody has their trigger points, and this was for me.
That's really helpful. I love the fact that you brought up sleeping right and your nutrition and your diet. Can you go into a little bit more detail? Like when did that light bulb come on that it's not just about putting in more miles on your feet or being longer on your bike? Your fitness truly is a more balanced perspective.
I think after I did my sort of I signed up for a Berlin Marathon with very little sort of background experience things. But once I did that, and training for that obviously helped lose the weight, like for everybody, right? It's not the race which makes you fit, right? It's the training for the race or a goal or whatever it is. So that continued, and it definitely made a difference. While I sort of started to think a little bit about what I ate, it didn't necessarily become a lifestyle or a habit. And once the marathon was over, the training would sort of slack off and then put through. So the yo-yo part of the weight going up and down kept happening until a certain point where I felt, you know what? One, I need to be more regular and disciplined in the training. But secondly, that's when I need to make sure I sort of eat right to not only maintain the weight, but to lose and get fitter, right? You need to almost eat right so that you can train right. So that's when I think after I would say a few years into running is when that started to kick in. But it took a while to sort of embed that as an active habit on a daily basis. I would say the sleep part took a longer time to sort of realize because working with long hours work, everything else, the sleep part. Even though we all know that sleep is important, I think until a certain point after even a few Ironmans where I said the only thing I changed between one race to another was actually just able to sleep a bit better and put through, and I could see the difference of recovery, rest, and things. And this was almost maybe this was maybe 10 years or 12 years back as opposed to 20 years back when I took up running. So the sleep part, even though I knew it, I think for me to actually see the benefits and for me to actually take the time to implement that, and that took a long time. Even now, running a startup and things, it's not in the best of shape, but definitely I acknowledge that a lot more now.
So jumping back into we'll break into both of those separately. Jumping back into the eating habits, you mentioned you've got an active habit on a daily basis. What is your routine? What is your daily basis?
I think two things. One is making sure there is balance in every meal, right? So which means, I mean, coming from India and sort of, when you look at Indian food, carbs will make its entry into every dish, whether you try or not. You don't have to try too hard. But obviously, The protein part is the hardest one, especially coming with that. But I don't necessarily eat sort of typical Indian food in all my meals. But if I just take that, that was one of the key things I had to make a change. So for me, it's about balance, right? Every meal needs to have a certain amount of protein, certain amount of fats, vitamins, fiber, carbs in the right proportion. And that's one thing. The second thing is, um, I mean, if Monday is a rest day after a big workout, I mean, is your Monday breakfast the same as a Wednesday breakfast after a big workout, right? So those are small things. So for me, one is a balance in every meal, and two, just and at the same time, not trying to go into a compelling thing to say I'd stay away from everything, right? And occasionally, you need to reward yourself, and food is a reward for me. You have a good week, it's all right to indulge at your this thing as opposed to other social things happening. Right? When you feel like eating, eat. Right? You need to feel I need to feel satisfied about things. So balance, rewarding yourself, and just maintaining a bit more diligence on when and what.
Thank you for that. So jumping into the sleep portion, my question is around like the night before a race. I know I struggle
Yeah.
to sleep the night before, especially an Ironman race, right? You're thinking about your race plan. You're thinking about, do you have all your gear? Is the bike set up right? Like you're just, everything's on your mind. Do you have any tricks or, life hacks for the night before sort of race worry?
I think just going through a checklist, right? After having done a couple of races, and I'd like to I'm a very visual person. So for me to just see everything out there and visualizing that, looking at a checklist, that takes a big thing off that. Have I put that? Have I put that? That is, so that is, that part is off the list of things which you still think about tomorrow, right? So that's number one. I mean, going back to my first race, uh, forget what I've packed or not. I think I slept for an hour and 15 minutes. That's all I slept before my first Ironman way back in 2008 because I was worried about making the swim cutoff times. I was a terrible swimmer. I'm a decent swimmer now, but managed to make the cutoff time by a minute and a half. So that made me sleepless. So I'm sure everybody has a lot of other things, but I think as the races progressed and things, the key thing was just making sure everything which has been packed and things put through. Everything which has been packed is there as a checklist. That's number one. Two is, I think, getting a great amount of sleep on a Friday night, Thursday night helps. I think that way, you're a little more relaxed. Even if Sunday you sleep later than normal because you're not getting your mind right and think, it's hard. But obviously having an early dinner, maybe even catch up a little more of a sleep in the afternoon. But someone who sleeps in the afternoon struggles to sleep in the night. I wouldn't advise that. There are a few like that. But I would say have a hot shower, sleep, and you know, and don't think about weather. Stop browsing about weather and wind directions and all sorts of things. You can control some things. You cannot control all those. It's the same for everybody. I think that's what most people go through, right? They go through all scenarios of all the things which can go wrong, right? I would tell people, hey, you're ready. You have a puncture, you'll fix it. Something happens, you'll fix it. So don't think about that. When it happens, you'll deal with it. So those are some things over a period which have.
Yeah, I've also find that really leaning into meditation the day before helps with the sleep and and the fact that your eyes are closed, but you're not asleep, you're still resting. And so I kind of redefine the night before as like getting enough rest versus sleep.
Yeah.
It sort of helps me with that. And
Yeah.
there's been so many races that you finally come home after a long day and you realize, I've probably been up for 24 hours given how my sleep cycle went.
Yeah.
Um, and I love your conversation around the checklist. One of the things that I do now is after I set up my transition, I'll take a
Yeah.
photograph
Absolutely.
and, the morning of or just before going to bed, I'll just sort of look at that photograph and double check and realize what I have.
Absolutely.
Deepak, I'm changing gears on you a little bit. You mentioned a startup and how that sort of creeps into your sleep. Talk to us about your startup. What are you doing these days?
After about 14 years of corporate IT career, in 2013, sort of end of June, I was already into running, then triathlon. I'd done a few Ironman triathlons, and then I'd reached a point where, I was not getting better at triathlon, or I was not spending enough time on sleep or time with work, family, lots of all those things were trying to balance. So decided to, walk away from that and make sort of triathlon a career. So primarily the startup was to train people uh, for triathlon and trying to popularize triathlon in India. So that's how that journey started way back in 2013. So it's a matter of doing small camps, clinics. I mean, at that time, we had to almost explain to people what a triathlon is, what those things are, right? Even now, obviously, in India, given cricket is out there and a lot of team sports, triathlon is not a is still in very early stages of development. So the whole idea was to sort of encourage more people. There were a few local small little triathlons being organized by others, supporting them, organizing my own camps, clinics, a few events, and pursuing Ironman and convincing Ironman to come into India, right? So that was pretty much it. So built my own sort of app and digital platform to coach people because India is a large country and you don't have triathletes, just showing up in swim squads or anything like that, right? It's not a very organized thing. So decided to go virtual starting 2013, 14, where using a platform, coach them remotely and slowly get that sport a little more developed and over a period work with Antman to see how we can bring Antman into India, find the right city, so all that. So primarily my startup Yoska is it's a digital platform. We provide training services. We are the franchise owner, so we organize Antman events in India and we work with the community to develop the sport, camps, clinics, on the ground sessions, lots of areas on that.
Any unexpected surprises in building that coaching business?
Uh, I think to start with, there were not enough triathletes in India to pay my bills because I walked away from a good corporate job and put through, but way back in 2013. So I started to coach runners and then, and slowly continue to speak to runners, cyclists to take up duathlon, triathlon, and slowly it started. So I would say to begin with, the market wasn't there. So I had to obviously go into a little more broader coaching aspect. The other thing is there are a lot of things you have to educate people, right? So the biggest thing for me when I started the training part is not just not just letting them know what triathlon is. Swimming as a culture or a thing is not there early on, right? So a lot of people are taking up to learn swimming at a very different age. So that's a hard one. Swimming continues to be an entry barrier for people to get into triathlon in any country, but more so here. The infrastructure, finding the right water body to do open water swims, and that whole infrastructure around doing a triathlon and finding the right city. So those were a lot of infrastructure problems, I would say, with respect to events, and to also encourage people to look through.
So managing and directing a race is a lot different than participating in a race.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your insights as a race director compared to a participant.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of. I think I appreciate a lot more of the event and what goes behind after organizing an event. So training and doing an event is one thing. Uh, I think the amount of prep which needs to go through in the months leading to a race, I think that's something which definitely was high. In case of India, there's a lot of permissions involved, road closures. It's not easy to, unlike other countries where councils and things are a little more open because there are more events like these and they understand what it takes. The challenges for I know I'm answering your question more from an India context, but I think the responsibilities will be the same for any race director and event organizer in other countries. Just that because events have been happening, maybe some steps could be a little smoother. But you still need to go through a lot with councils of road closures, preparations, water body, quality testings, a lot of those things. And prepping, is there enough ice for the last person finishing a race? Right. So imagine that as a participant, when you're running through an aid station and you see that you don't have either if there's a gel missing or there's no ice because, well, it's over, right? Imagine that as a participant, right? So those are, and having participated in races, I was accustomed to a certain thing. So I was very clear to our team that, hey, look, this is what it is. We need to be as much prepared and a little over prepared, whether it's all those. So the entire race organization with respect to steps and the number of volunteers training the volunteers. You'll appreciate a lot more when a volunteer is standing there and handing a bottle to you while you're cycling past at 20 or 30 kilometers an hour, right? So the amount of thing which goes behind, I think I'm more appreciative of that. And I'm also more willing to forgive people if something doesn't, because I understand there are so many things, right? So as a participant, if I'm doing things, but definitely it's a lot of hard work behind the scenes happen. And as a race director, I mean, I remember even first race, second race, I don't get to see the race. Because you're just there in one section, then you're going somewhere. Actually, when the whole video is done of the event, that's when you really truly see what the event was about and how well it sort of looked and things like that.
I love the fact that you bring the participation to your race directing. And I'm very thankful that you think about that last person and at that last aid station, because I've been at those aid stations, not quite the last person, but pretty close. And you're just kind of counting on the one thing to be there, and it's not. Um, let's go a little bit deeper into that. Like, if you let's talk about the team that is needed to pull off an Ironman race. You talked about the volunteers. I'm sure you've got staff. Like, really give us an insight of what it takes. Like, how big's the team? What are the roles? As a participant who just appreciates, the start line, finish line, and everything in between. Give us some insights of what it looks like from the team perspective to put that race on.
Uh, I think number of volunteers. I mean, we have anywhere between 800 to 1,000 volunteers, and that's a lot. That's a lot of people to recruit, train, and depending upon the city you're doing it in, sometimes it's harder, right? A small town, small city, and things like that. It's harder to find locals, but you do have people. Not everybody would travel to volunteer as much as however passionate they are. They might come to see the thing. There are people who still travel, and we have a bunch of people who write to us to say, I want to volunteer. So I think volunteering, that is a very large number. We don't necessarily, because we do one or two events a year and we do a few other smaller events, we as a company, or most event management companies, don't necessarily have the entire event team sort of on the payroll or all year long, which means you're activating people closer to the event, but they need to be very clear in what needs to happen, right? Right through from process to documentation to everything else. So there's a lot of prep which happens. Then there is a team which is activated, which could be obviously volunteers. Then comes a bunch of people, right through from race referees to transition managers. So if you look at race director, under that there is swim course director, run course director, cycling course director, medical director, volunteer, transition manager, finish line, post race, food, awards. So many things are happening right through from expo to registration to things. So that entire list of people is quite large. Some of them are full-time people with us who play different roles. Some of them are primarily consultants and things with whom you will engage, preferably who have already done it. The last event is always easier, right, in terms of explaining. So that's one. Then there is the government, the licensing with the departments. The number of approvals you need to get before a race happens is significant, for us in India at least. So the number of people you need to go get clearance, not just roads, not just traffic police, civil police, it's all the way to seas and port officers and captain of ports to fire departments to anything. So there is a completely dedicated team there who work with those. And then actual road closures at 3 a.m. in the morning or 4 a.m. in the morning. So there are all these marshals who then work closely with that to get that closed. So that's a significant amount of work. And find every car which has been parked in a cycle course. You need to tow that or get that right. I know I'm going to a slightly lower detail, but those are the finer things which maybe a participant might not understand. That there's the reason why the road's nice and clear is because someone overnight or early morning did it, and some of those things can't be done. A lot of the work can't be done a week in advance. You can prepare medals and designs and plan everything else in advance and get it, but a lot of it happens X hours before a race. Road closures, finisher on. So the event production team is quite large. Obviously, marketing, branding, PR, managing key stakeholders, governments. Very large team. A lot of team gets activated closer to the event. I'm very thankful to the community. A lot of people who come and support me have either been, I've trained them a few years back. They are in the sport and they have come back. And when we set up the training academy, a lot of them took up coaching and started to I've added a lot of coaches, so they also play a role. Like my state coach director is a triathlon coach, our is my past trainee who's been with us for a number of years. So the community is quite supportive, very strong. They want to be part of it, but it does take a fair amount of people to get that. And year on year, hopefully there is a repetition and people learn a bit more every year.
That's super insightful and makes me even more appreciate the effort that goes into these races. And so my hat's off to you and your team. Um, let's talk about coaching and coaching in the virtual world. Like, you started this coaching virtually way before the pandemic
Yeah.
and way before we all got very comfortable with Zoom and doing things online. How have you seen coaching change and the tools that are being used, and where do you see it going? And give us a little sense of what your perspective is on sort of coaching in general.
I think um, I think whether it's virtual or physical, I think wearing a coach's hat and uh, having the best interest of your trainee and thinking about what is needed, all that, whether it's virtual or physical. I think as a coach, people's philosophy of coaching could have a slight differences to training styles and micro cycles, macro cycles, but most of them are thinking about how to keep that person motivated, how to keep that person focused and things. Now, sometimes when you're not coaching in person, you can't sort of judge and see how that person felt after a workout, right? So that's the part we had to write, then put it. And one of the key things I had to write up there when we built our own app and platforms: how do you feel after the workout? I know now it's a standard with most of the tools which is out there, but that was the main thing for me, because a stat can tell me how your thing was. I can read all your stats, we integrate all that, but how did you feel after the workout? Do you feel like you could push more and things? So that was a very key element, and that was something which people made sure we captured when we do our sort of weekly calls or things. It's important to have a video call just to see and get that person, because there are people whom I had coached and I met them only after 6 years because of other reason. So there were people whom I had coached for a number of years and never even met them in person. But I think having video calls, taking videos of their swim videos, looking at that, that is how I started. Whether so so a lot of it based on that. And we were also doing a few group classes already, right? We used to do, we didn't have Peloton or Zwift then, but we would just jump onto a bike and have a general Zoom or whatever session, and we would do that. So it was important to keep that connection. But the technology now obviously gives you a lot more insights about someone, but what buttons to push as a coach to a trainee is still so much personal. Any amount of
Mm.
stats is not going to get you that. So I believe in a lot in understanding that person, and and remembering what is important for that person. The person prefers to swim on a Tuesday, not on a Thursday, because of some reason, and that not being right now. Obviously, technology helps you in that, right? In putting all small little notes and things. Otherwise, you will be maintaining spreadsheets galore to talk to people and things. So technology, I think, used effectively, definitely makes you more prepared to coach the right way. But we still have a few people on the ground and things just to make sure on that whenever necessary.
I like how you said, you know, knowing what buttons to push. And I kind of see that as the secret sauce of coaching, right? You could go online and find a training plan and do the training plan. But if you don't know that Tuesday is a bad day for me, or Friday is, or what my workout was 3 days ago and how I
Yeah.
felt and what things to adjust, that's really where the the secret sauce of a coach comes in.
Yeah, I mean, look, people, it's an expensive sport, but if you really look at it, Greg, I tell this to a few people, but it sounds like I'm trying to sell coaching. But I think the amount of money which people spend on the sport, maybe 5 to 8% could be actual coaching fees. To be honest, the amount of money goes on a bike and races and everything else, but it's the other 95% is actually maximized by this whoever is working with you, right? So
Mm.
that's something which which I mean, yeah, that's something which is important, because when most people who train on their own end up training either too much or too less, never the right amount, right? So that always happens. So definitely something which I would say, which I would recommend.
So how much of the person, your trainee, how much of the other aspects of their life do you take into account when coming up with a training plan or trying to get them to a start or finish line?
Yeah, no, that's a very important part because no amount of automation or science will take care of that, right? I mean, there is obviously, but for example, we need to key things. What I work with is you need to understand where that person is. I mean, not the location, where their conditioning is, what it is, and where it is. Second, where they want to get to, right? And number three, what else is happening around their life? Okay, right? You can give them a plan and say, figure it out. That doesn't work that way. All right, how many hours, what days you would like to train, how many hours you would like to train. If your workload and office is there, how do we cycle that? How do we maybe use that as a recovery week instead of that, right? So that, because unless you do that, you're just expecting everything like a happy flow. Happy flow, you can take a static plan, download, follow, and you can assume everything happens as normal and you just progress. That never happens that way, right? Life comes in between. So definitely something which we take is almost on a weekly basis. Hey, how was last week looking like? What is next week looking like? Do you think it's going to be the same? Do you need to look at it? It's just not about moving one swim from Tuesday to Thursday, but how is their energy levels? What's happening? And let's not go by standards. If somebody takes a recovery week every 4 weeks, sometimes you just have to give them one more, even though it was just 2 weeks back, right? So those things, and those things will only come when you speak to the person and sort of read between the lines or read between the stats, and that will only come by talking and getting a few patterns being followed.
Yeah, there's been to your point, there's so many times I've reached out to my coach and said, "Oh, hey, I forgot I'm gonna be out of the country next week, and I'm not gonna be able to do 80% of our training plan."
Yeah,
And then she probably says something not very nice, and we move
yeah,
on. Deepak, I'm changing gears on you a little
yeah.
bit. I'd love to get into the emotions you felt leaving your life corporate lifestyle, 14 years, and becoming an entrepreneur. Like, was that something you were thinking about for years and years, and then you finally broke away, or did you just wake up one morning and say, I gotta do this, and you just turned the corner and went forward?
I think it was somewhere in the middle with respect to it. Didn't take, I mean, until 2012 and 2013, I started to see that my body was breaking down because the amount of time I was getting in terms of sleep versus work and training and family time, it was just the balance was not there. That was quite evident. But it never occurred to me to say, all right, what do I do types, right? There was it's not like there was an immediate solution or anything, right? So, and but also it was not for too long. I think 2012, I remember I didn't do any races, even though I'd signed up for one. There were the work front things. There were quite a few demanding things, and I had to sort of let go of that. So that sort of built and sort of set a little bit of the stage. I had started to think about how I can get India a little more ready for triathlon, and when I started to think, I started to visualize, and I started to maybe coach a few people and just start to build my own little things, little bit of training spreadsheets and things that just started. But then I was, from my own triathlon perspective, I tried to go under 11 hours. And once I think I did 11 hours, 1 minute and 30 seconds. I did 11 hours and 50 seconds, 50 seconds. Then I did 11 hours and 29 seconds. Obviously, I could have done better in transition or tied my shoelaces better or things, but obviously, right, that going back, but in general, I knew I had plateaued to a point where how much of things I could do. So and I do remember driving back along with my wife in 2013, I think, on from one of those race days. That's when it said, well, I think I'd like to do something different. What do you think? It was a long 500, 600 kilometer trek. So there was a lot of time to talk. So that's when I would say it all sort of pieced together. I had discussed with my work colleagues, and they were like, maybe you should take a sabbatical, take a break, go after what you want, see. All that had sort of come to a point. But if I really have to pick that one point at things, it was that long drive back after I had done 11 hours and I think 29 seconds, if I remember. And I couldn't go under 11 hours, but I knew my body's breaking down. It's not like next race I can't. And there was family, there was work, and there was triathlon. And those three, I felt there was space only for two. One had to go. That's how it was. And so work had to go, but also work had to change. So the idea was, can I make triathlon, coaching, all these things my work? And I gave myself let's try this for 6 to 10 months and see if I can still pay my bills and other things. And my wife's been solid supporter, right even before that. If you're all triathletes, you know how much support you get from from your partners and family just to train. Now this was about not only training but actually trying to develop the sport in India, all that. So, and financially, it makes a big difference. 14-year corporate career, suddenly it only not only goes to zero, it goes might go negative, right? Because you need to put money into the new startup. So what people don't realize is it's not like it becomes zero, but you need to then dip into your savings and things. So, and but look, thanks to my wife, she was not only supportive just at that stage, but continues to support me through that. But yeah, we had to change a few things in lifestyle. We remember moving from house A to house B because of where it is, right? Making a long list of things of what are the nice to haves, what are the must haves, and small things like that. But yeah, but we knew it was a phase, and thankfully now the startups in the last 11 years we've done well. We obviously raised funds. We're sort of break even, profitable, going through a few things there. So yeah, that's where we stand.
That's a great story. So what advice would you give? We've got an audience member who's thinking about starting his or her own career, breaking away from corporate. What advice, now that you've been at this for 11 years, what advice would you give him or her?
I don't look. I mean, I would say, don't be afraid of failure. I mean, a lot of this will sound like cliches, but look, if you want to, I would say when I think I was 35, I would tell people, look, still a significant amount of time left, right? If at 35 you start something, or 30 or whatever it is, and it doesn't work out, and you want to go back to things, keep those options open too. Right? I hadn't burnt any bridges with my corporate. Let's say in 6 to 10 months time, it's nice to say that I'm going to go hard and put that and all that, but I think it's important to also, I had not burnt any bridges with my company. I mean, they would have taken me back after 8 months if I had told them it's not working out, I'd like to come back. So I think it's all right to keep those options. It's not like not you're not putting all of your heart into it, right? You are, but it's okay to just think about what ifs. That's one. Think about the financial situation, have a discussion with family and others, right? Even though you're and a very in-depth discussion, I would say, with respect to where these things are, what does this mean, which will change things for a while and things, because every day is going to be a grind. Okay. And also find out what your outlets are, how do you unwind. I think that's important. That's important for everybody, but more so when you're a founder of a startup, right? Which is, for me, it was triathlon, right? Or running. Even if I've done training in the morning, if I have to clear my head, I might go for a run in the evening, right? So I think it's important to have that and build whatever little support system you can. But yeah, stay focused on one thing, and the community. A lot of people will support you. I think you will be surprised with the kind of support you will get from very unknown places, or people and things will go out of their way. So I think don't hesitate to take that jump. At the same time, and give yourself some time, but please structure it. Write down your goals. It's like, it doesn't matter if you finished a 5 hour marathon, right? If you want to run a sub 3, you write that goal, pick your things. If it takes time, so if you're starting your own thing, plan properly. And but yeah, it's a grind, but I think you'll enjoy because you will be doing it on your terms. So that's the part which, and I can spend more time with and work from home. I can spend more time with my family and son. I don't think I could have taken my son swimming 3 times or 4 times a week if I was in my corporate career. I can be very clear about that. I couldn't have maybe visited him for one of his school things and things, right? I mean, not trying to say we all don't try enough, but work comes in the way. And let me be honest, right? So there are lots of things I would have missed things. So for whatever reasons, I had my reasons of moving out, which was passion, more time with family and triathlon. But whatever those reasons and people things are, I would say go hard, and I'm sure you'll get all the support you need from people and sometimes from people who you don't know. You're going to meet them.
You touched on a lot of similarities between endurance training and entrepreneurship. Anything else come to mind when you think about those two aspects of your life?
No, you're right. I mean, we can't burn ourselves out even though we're working hard, right? It's like I mean, how you run at 20Ks or 32Ks or 38Ks is different. You're tired, but there is more, right? So the key important thing is pacing yourself every day. and not passion is fine, but at the same time, take care of yourself. I think that's the main thing. Just like endurance, like you said, after you do your workout, you take care of yourself, right? The same thing. Every day is a big grind, but just take care of yourself and spend that time with family and things, because otherwise, yeah, I mean, you're doing it for whatever reasons you have. There's obviously commercials, money element involved in trying to, get profitable, all that. But most times people are doing it because there is a passion. The money will also come. So, but take care of yourself, spend more time with family, and make sure you have an outlet of whatever it is you have to unwind. I think that's very important.
So I have to give you a couple minutes to convince us to come to India
Ah,
to do our next race. Give us the pitch. Tell me why I should jump on a plane and toe the line in October.
I think to start with, I think India is a country where most people have wanted to visit, right? Forget triathletes or not. That I think at least it's on your list. If it's not top of your list, bottom, it's somewhere there when people felt there's something culturally different. I think so. Even before I go into Goa, the city and the race, I think India is such a diverse country. So obviously, it's something which for people to experience and look at it. I think. Just not the food, but the culture, the traditions, and every state has a different language, different food, and things. So you could get a mixture of that part of it. And in terms of the race happens in Goa, and Goa is a beach town. It's a party town. It's the number one tourist destination, not only for internationals but also for domestic people. So Goa is a great spot. Even though I mean, even though India is a British colony and a British thing, Goa was actually has a Portuguese heritage. So that's something people might not know. So there's a lot of Portuguese culture completely there with respect to great, right? So from architecture, food, one of the best beaches in India, or and it's a long list of beaches, not just one where we do the race, which is Miramar. But look, in addition to spending time doing a race in Goa and spending time in Goa, I'm sure you can visit a bunch of other places which were always on your list of things to do. Goa. Yeah, look, it's the fourth edition. It's on 27th of October. We've put up three editions. We had 35 countries come last time. So over a period, we've got 50 unique countries visit Goa. We want more people to come and visit, and we're forming a concierge sort of service. So any questions, whether it's how to travel, where to stay, and things. I understand people will have questions and reservations. I'm finding that. So we are happy to help beyond just telling you this is the race, sign up here. So we're very excited to welcome everybody.
Well done. Deepak, how can an audience member get in touch with you?
Yoska.in is our website. They can write to us. There's an email address. They can ping us on our Facebook handles, on our LinkedIn, any of it. Our team will get in touch. But Yoska, YOSKA.in, IN for India, is our website. Write to us at support, or any of our team members. Happy to help, whether it's race, whether it's training, whether it is just a question about India, having a conversation, whatever it is, happy to help.
Fantastic. And we'll include those links in our show notes. It's been awesome chatting with you today. I really enjoyed doing that comparison between endurance training and entrepreneurship, getting into like the back end scenes of what a race really takes. 1,000 volunteers. I had no idea. I see them as I ride by on my bike, but I never realized the army of people it takes to pull off those races. Deepak, thank you for your time. It's been great having you on the show.
Thanks, Greg, and thank you once again for the opportunity. And it's always nice to catch up. And thank you for doing this. And I'm sure a lot of other people, and you've done a few more shows. Thank you again for bringing this platform alive.
It's my pleasure. And to our audience member, we ask audience members, please like this show. Please share it with your community. We want this message, our message, to be spread as wide and as far as we can. Once again, Deepak, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefenduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits.